Hello and welcome to Summoner Spam. I'm Joseph, and today we're going to be talking about the most badass witch in video games, Bayonetta. Bayonetta is one of two surviving members of an elite clan of witches, charged with the overseeing of time and history. She's fundamentally immortal, she can still die, but it'll never be of something like old age, incredibly durable, and virtually unstoppable. As a member of the Umbra Witches, Bayonetta learned how to fight using a myriad of weapons, and also taught how to use the bullet arts, a fighting style that emphasizes the use of quick melee attacks, empowering bullets with magic, and utilizing the Umbran magic known as the Wicked Weave. The Wicked Weave is a style of summoning magic that is known only to the Ladies of Umbra. Once they have built up a substantial reserve of magic, it allows them to summon the limbs of demons they have made pacts with, to execute devastating punches and kicks capable of destroying most enemies. When tasked with the disposal of much larger enemies, Bayonetta is capable of summoning the full form of a demon she has a contract with. When she does so, she uses her hair like chains to keep them from running rampant, making them do her bidding through sheer force of will. Multitude of weapons and summoning magic aside, Bayonetta also has access to one of the most powerful kinds of magic in the universe, Witch Time, an Umbran technique that increases her perception and physical ability, in a sense, slowing down time for everyone around her, allowing her to pick them off one by one before they even know what hit them. Now, we know what her arsenal looks like, but what do we know about her? Well, as a character, Bayonetta seems to approach everything with a bit of charm and scathing wit. She dances through the battlefield to such an extent that you could reasonably believe she always has a tune playing in the back of her head and she just can't stop moving to the groove. And she has fun doing it. Bayonetta dances purely for her own enjoyment, and won't stop just because you happen to be brandishing a weapon at her. Outside of that, Bayonetta likes to present herself as a bit of a bad girl, and that's probably a result of her history. Remember when I said she is a member of the Umbra Witches? Well, that's true, but her father was a man of the Lumen Sages, the second clan tasked with the overseeing of time. These two clans were equals in every right, one born of the power of darkness, the other of light, and while equal, they were meant to be kept separate. This rule was broken by the Umbra Witch Rosa and the Lumen Sage Balder, and together they had little Cereza, who would later grow up to become Bayonetta. Now, given the circumstances which gave Bayonetta life, you could understand that both orders were none too pleased. Rosa was placed in chains that severely restricted her magical powers, her weapons were stripped of their former power, and she was left to raise her child from behind bars, while her father, Balder, was outright exiled from the Lumen Sages. Yeah, Bayonetta didn't have the brightest childhood. It's safe to assume that for most of her life, she was treated as an outcast, kept within the clan, but still an outcast. Even when her best friend Jean challenged her to a duel, their superiors were outraged at the thought of the heir to the clan leadership competing with a child of impure blood, even going so far as to state it as a violation of their tenets of faith. Bayonetta was someone who wasn't supposed to exist, and given how she was probably treated, I could understand why she would just embrace the notion of being a bad girl. I mean, why be miserable for all eternity because others hate you for something you can't control, when you could just embrace the hate, learn to love yourself, and flaunt everything you have and just have fun. And let me emphasize the fun part. Bayonetta enjoys every last thing about her life, the constant battles with the angels of Paradiso, her sexual nature, and what can only be assumed is a large amount of money. I mean, she goes through nun suits like tissue paper as part of her day-to-day shenanigans. That is to say, when she isn't out saving the world, Bayonetta seems to spend her days luring angels to churches and graveyards so she can take their halos and keep her infernal buddies happy. Not to mention when she goes through two dresses that are presumed to be very valuable, and she shrugs it off with an attitude that says it's just a minor annoyance. Let's not even delve into the "it's not Christmas without caviar" line. You know, caviar? Something that can cost a couple $1,000s for a 17-ounce tin? But there's more to this lady than just guns, charm, and joyful energy. Bayonetta is the kind of person who will literally go to hell to pull her friends out of a pinch. If those friends are hurt, the only thing that could possibly save you is Rodin, and if Rodin is saving you, it's not for any good reason. And even though she doesn't care for crybabies, she'd never allow a child to fall into a dangerous situation. And don't get me wrong, even though they're nearby while she's decimating a flock of angels, they couldn't be in a safer place. Bayonetta flirts and plays, but when it comes down to it, she cares. She can get serious if she really needs to be, and when she does, Madama Butterfly's got her back. Now with all that said and done, how was Bayonetta as a character received by the public? Turns out, Bayonetta is at the center of a bit of controversy. Where there are many who see her as a strong, empowering character, there are quite a few who disagree. Personally, I think of Bayonetta as a strong, empowering character because she loves herself and her body and has no qualms with flaunting it. While the argument can be made that she only dances or shows off her body for the benefit of the player, I personally don't buy into that line of thinking. Because I've played both of her games and have come to an understanding. Bayonetta doesn't dance or strip for the benefit of anyone but herself. Yes, you can argue that the camera leers at her during cutscenes, and as such she's just a sex object who is rewarding the player for a job well done. But that doesn't quite work either. If that was the case, she wouldn't bother to strip in the middle of battle either, using her hair, which also doubles as her clothes, to summon demons to crush her enemies. And in those instances, the only time you really notice that she's stripped down to what basically amounts to a sexy bathing suit is when you're going out of your way to do so. Which, quite honestly, yes, perverts will be perverts and go out of their way to look at her like that, but that hardly counts as a reward for the player. In those instances, she isn't displaying her body as a reward for someone else. Her swimsuit is on display because she only has so much hair and can only fill one role at a time, either as clothing or as Madame Butterfly's fist. What I'm trying to get at is that the argument that Bayonetta is a sex object and goes out of her way to reward the player with her body loses face when you realize that Bayonetta is consistently sexy all the time. Even when the camera isn't up close and personal, she struts like she owns the place, executes torture attacks which make her the owner of a power fantasy, and strips for the sole pleasure of crushing her opponents with her hair. None of those instances are rewards for the player, but simply how she operates as a character. And you can't really justify that the cutscenes that take place throughout the game are rewards for the player simply because they happen regardless of how well the player does. So long as they progress through the game, those cutscenes will happen regardless of whether or not you got a stone reward or a pure platinum. In short, you could be the shittiest player in the world. Bayonetta doesn't care about that because she's still gonna own that camera either way. The camera doesn't leer at her because she purposely breaks the fourth wall, knows the camera is there, and then owns it and enjoys herself doing it. Some people like to scream sexual objectification, and I can see how they reach that viewpoint, and that is perfectly fine. People are free to think and feel however they want. I see Bayonetta, and I see a woman who loves herself, works her Amazonian body, and is a great example of body positivity. But the game developer's intent was clearly to pander to a straight male audience. Who gives a fuck what their intent was? You are your own human being. What you think as the intent of a developer doesn't matter. At least not to me, because there is no way you can confirm that. Platinum Games isn't a singular entity. It's not a hive mind with only one train of thought. It's filled with hundreds of people who put time and effort into making these games, and each of them has their own perception of Bayonetta as a character. And unless you intend to go to Platinum Games and interrogate all of them, you can never know for certain what they think of her as a character. When it comes down to it, trying to discern the intent of a video game developer is nothing more than just speculation. So it's up to you, the player, to take this thing that they made and come to a conclusion yourself of what this game and what Bayonetta means to you. For good or for ill, it's up to you to develop your own perceptions. And with that, it's time to bring this episode to a close. Thank you for watching this week's Summoner Spam. How did you receive Bayonetta as a character? Were you as charmed by her personality as I was, or did you decide that she just wasn't the right action hero for you? Leave a comment down below to let me know.